We've all seen that one play that makes zero sense until it somehow wins you the round.
Oh, wait!
Oh, you got him, you got him.
You got him!
Wait, that
You're
was sick.
genius!
Hey guys, it's Konpeki here, and I'm usually the guy who teaches clean fundamentals and polished mechanics, so trust me when I say these tips shouldn't work. But if you use them right, they might just carry your next ranked game. So in this video, I'm giving you one weird tip for every agent in Valorant. Let's start with Astra, and trust me, it only gets weirder from here. Did you know you can hide inside one-way smokes by going into astral form? You can't do this by simply standing in areas like Icebox 410 or screens. Instead, if you enter astral form while inside the one-way, it makes you virtually invisible unless the enemy pushes through the smoke. This is extremely risky and difficult, but can be highly rewarding if you pull it off. Now, Breach continues the trend of risky plays, thanks to a strange but unique use of his ultimate. Normally, you avoid ulting your teammates, but there's an exception if you have a monstrous Neon or Jet on your team. You can combine your ult with their movement abilities to launch them even higher and further than they could ever reach on their own. For Brimstone, he doesn't physically boost his teammates, but he can set them up for insane outplays with a creative twist. Instead of asking him to smoke an area and hiding inside of it, try asking him to drop his orbital strike on you. You can hide in the ult if you have enough HP and good enough timing. This is one of the riskiest moves here, but it can pay off in a big way. Brimstone can also do this for himself, though it comes with the same high risk, high reward. And speaking of bizarre, did you know Chamber can double pump his operator like a shotgun? While he can't build a city in less than a second, he can do something iconic that Fortnite is well known for. He has a trick reminiscent of the double pump strategy from that game. If you've ever watched the popular streamer Horkus play, you might have seen this tech before, but if you haven't, the idea is simple. You take a shot with your operator, then swap to your ultimate right away to have a faster time between your shots. So now for Clove, you may have never expected this, but Clove now has a supportive ability that requires lineups, and that comes with their new decay properties. But what exactly does this lineup look like, and what can you use as a reference to practice? If you've ever played Viper, Sage, or Vice before, all your slow and molly lineups match perfectly with Clove's new decay. So you can look up old or new lineups from these agents and they'll translate one-to-one with Clove's decay. And if you thought those tips were bizarre, there's plenty more to explore. But let's be real, tips alone won't carry you to Radiant. If you've been stuck for weeks, it's not just about how many videos you watch, but it's about having the right guidance. And that's exactly what me and my team of a dozen Radiant and VCC coaches can give you. We help players rank up 500 RR in 10 weeks guaranteed, or you get your money back. And how can I promise that? Well, we've already helped hundreds of players break through their plateau, like Shinjin, who went from Diamond 1 to Immortal in just 33 days. And don't worry, we have options for less than $1 a day. So if you're tired of being hard stuck, book a free call using the link in the description where we'll review your tracker and see if you'd be a good fit. Spots are limited for our 10-week program, so they're first come, first serve. So don't wait. All right, and to pick things back up for Cypher, he's already a master of sneaking around the map.
Hello there.
But did you know he's also a master of hiding in plain sight? If you haven't already seen Acre the Dog's insane Cypher gameplay, he's mastered the art of hidden cages, or in other words, cages that you can hide in for outplay potential. A great example of this would be his Haven cage for A short. He uses his camera and cage to set up the perfect timings to backstab enemies rushing into A. Deadlock may not be as stealthy as Cypher, but she excels at punishing loud rushes with her sound sensors. Though many consider them her weakest ability, you can actually make them lethal if you place them through walls. The sensors will still trigger when enemies make noise in range, which can catch enemies off guard. A spot like under Heaven on Ascent can be perfect for easy kills. For Fade, she doesn't stall pushes the way Deadlock does, but she gathers info in a very unique way. Most Fade players guide their prowlers for intel, then swing on enemies. However, you don't have to steer your prowlers every time. If you let them run free, they'll still auto-target enemies and allow you to pull out your weapon sooner. And up next is Gecko. If you've ever found it awkward to use his ult and hold W while looking for enemies and trying to bunny hop, this tip is for you. A lesser known detail about his ultimate is that he keeps moving forward even if you don't press W. And this might free you up a bit to focus more on your strafing and giving you greater control over your positioning while guiding the ultimate. And now for Harbor, similar to what we talked about Clove, Harbor's Cove has the same lineups as Viper's Orb. So if you have any of those lineups in your back pocket and are interested in the waterbender of Valorant, you can adapt the same lineups for surprising plays. Okay, and for ISO, we found new value for ISO after buffs to his wall and vulnerable. One neat trick involves using ISO's wall to actually push through smokes more safely or punishing close range opponents. Take a look at this TENS clip for example. He scales up into the site through 2 one-ways, uses a slow wall to scale, and isolates duels way easier than he ever could with normal speed, and this makes ISO a better entry than ever before. Because the wall moves slower, you'll be able to see your opponent's character model sooner than the opponents can from their point of view, and the wall will even block some bullets for you if they try to shoot you too early. And moving on to Jett, she may be known for aggressive plays, but here's an interesting tip you might not have heard of. Across many different maps such as Lotus and Icebox, Jett can actually fling herself into the air way higher than she should be able to with just one updraft. To do the super dash on Icebox, jump onto this box and push yourself into this line on the ramp by attacker spawn. Now, aim at this corner on the wall, and once the barrier drops, press dash and jump right when you hit the corner. If you combine this jump with her knives, you can get some insanely cool multi-kills and leave the enemies confused about where they died from. And moving on to KO, he can be just as aggressive as Jett in the right circumstances. Take his molly as an example. Because it activates in ticks, you can dodge the full damage if you leave the molly. But if it's your own molly, that means you take minimal damage if you step into it. Much like a Phoenix player going into their own molly, you can do the same as a KO with some crazy pop flash plays to punish through smokes and catch the enemies by surprise. Killjoy matches up with agents like KO because her mollies also align with other utility lineups. However, her mollies don't activate until you manually trigger them, which can create sneaky setups. For example, placing a molly by default on a site icebox makes it nearly impossible to stop you from popping it if you position it carefully. You can also place her molly in more vertical areas, but these are more accessible to break, so keep this in mind when trying them out. For Neon, her popularity has exploded thanks to buffs and rising stars like Temet and Kong. But here's a bizarre fact you might not know. Neon can actually updraft when executed correctly. The outplay potential is insane because most players won't expect this, especially from a Neon. To pull off this trick, push yourself into this corner, tap A and slide. While mid-slide, hit crouch. After about half a second, press W in the middle of your slide and this will launch you in the air. And for Omen, he doesn't have slides, but he can pull off some mind-bending outplays with his ultimate. Some of the best use is often attributed to Opium Omen, who uses his ult so aggressively that enemies can't guess his next move. Let's look at a good example of this from his clutch on Ascent. When he was isolating duels, you can see some pretty standard Omen tech. However, once he uses his ultimate onto the box for Heaven instead of TPing somewhere else like you'd expect, the opponent isn't sure about what he's doing either. However, if you think about it, Opium Omen is pulling the enemy's crosshair directly behind where he's positioned on Gen to get the clutch. If you can do this with your own Omen ults, you might find more success with it as a combat tool rather than just as a rotation tool. And this next tech for Phoenix is accredited to XTR. He popularized the wall pop flash that is simple yet effective. Instead of curving the flash around the corner, use a wall to shorten the distance, popping the flash directly on enemies with less time for them to react to it. It's similar to a standard flash, but faster and harder to dodge. A tool lots of time for Raze mains has to be the movement tech behind the Raze rocket. Players like Flights used to rocket boost themselves around the map faster than anyone else. This included using rocket boosts along with satchels to soar above the map and surprise enemies from behind. Reyna, on the other hand, requires perfect accuracy to get a lot of value. That's because she doesn't get to activate most of her kit without getting kills. But did you actually know that Reyna has some insane movement tech? When Reyna gets a kill and dismisses, her maximum speed actually goes up by 30%, and this allows her to jump way further than normal. This is especially useful on maps like Icebox, where the boost in speed lets you jump on top of boxes on A site that you normally wouldn't have been able to with a single jump. Combine the dismiss with her ult, your opponents will have a really hard time tracking where you're jumping to. Now, with Sage, she doesn't have this kind of mobility, but she does have the verticality on every map. For example, there are Grim Walls that can set you on crazy unexpected angles. But what about fake walls? Fake walls are walls you place so the enemy thinks you're standing on top of the wall, but you're actually in front of the wall, or you're hidden away and ready to punish anyone staring up at the wall. And speaking of looking up at the sky, did you know you don't always need to guide your bird on sky to land insane pop flashes? Many players think they have to wait for the enemy to get up close before swinging with their flash. However, just like Fade's dog, you can use free roam to your advantage. For example, on C Long Lotus, you can guide a bird over the mound and pop pop it behind cover. This lets you fight with your flash instead of waiting for enemies to move closer. While this isn't always the best option, pulling it off can create strange and awkward timings, and this can force unexpected reactions from your opponents. And here's an unexpected treat. Sova can also use his ultimate for movement. One of the lesser known methods is using your ult to position yourself on unusual vertical angles. Take Haven for example. When you have Sova's ult, normally they like to ult a lobby from sight or A link as a standard play to get kills. So if you do ult right away from A short, nothing will look suspicious until you see Sova on top of the short box after his third laser seemed to have missed entirely. And with initiators, it's always helpful to have tricks like Sova's up your sleeves. And Taeho is no different. Have you been jump droning or just trolling? Well, you might not be aware, but if you jump spot with the Taeho drone, it actually has extra distance on where it can travel to. And on top of this drone is a vertical monster and can go over plenty of boxes you may have never expected. Viper, on the other hand, doesn't have any weird tech like Sova or Taeho. However, while you can't pick up the orb anymore, Viper is now the only controller left with custom one-ways for many maps. A great example of this would be her one-ways on Ascent. While she's not everyone's first pick, she can be an unexpected menace with one-ways on B main and in tree. And speaking of lineups, Vice is no exception to the lineup class of agents you can play. However, she can line up more than just her thorns. Did you know you can place the flash on or through the ground to throw off enemies? Take Fracture as an example. If you go underground as Vice, you can throw your flash through the ground into Generator or into the smoke there to catch your enemies off guard trying to retake the site. And with that supportive spirit in mind, Waylay is a unique case in the duelist category. She has a dive ability, a unique molly, and a dismiss like Phoenix's ultimate that puts her in the duelist class. Unfortunately, the reality of Waylay is that she struggles to entry in the same way as other duelists. However, that means she can support other duelists in a very unique and interesting way. You can put vertical duelists like Jet and Raze in a state of zero gravity to help them float longer in the air to use their ultimates and abilities more effectively. And last but not least, we have Yoru. He's the ultimate agent of deception in Valorant. He has fake TPs, fake clones, and fake flashes to pull your attention away from his real intent. That doesn't include the basic side of his abilities either. Did you know Yoru clones match what gun you're holding? Yep, that's right. You can classic out your clone, then pull out a rifle or shotgun to throw off your opponents in rounds they aren't expecting you to have a gun. And that wraps things up for today. If you found this video interesting, you might enjoy this other one where we cover 23 essential Valorant tips. Thanks for watching.